What you're about to hear isn't the sanitized version found in textbooks or recruitment reels. According to declassified operational summaries and first-hand sniper testimonies, the deadliest force facing U.S. covert units in Southeast Asia was often invisible, unarmed, and unavoidable. The jungle itself. And when the sky opened, it became something far worse. Military records show that tropical storms didn't merely interrupt missions, they rewrote them in real time, stripping away control, precision, and sometimes sanity. Pay close attention. This is the side of war few are willing to discuss. Not the firefights. Not the kill counts. But the long hours pinned in place by rain so violent it erased the horizon. Rain that turned rifles unreliable, maps meaningless, and the human body into a liability. For American forest snipers operating in denied territory, storms were not weather events. They were psychological sieges. In doctrine, a sniper's greatest weapons are patience, stillness, and clarity of mind. Tropical storms attacked all three at once. Sheets of rain hammered foliage until the jungle screamed. Visibility collapsed to a few meters. Sound behaved unpredictably, footsteps vanished, voices traveled, and enemy movement blended seamlessly with the chaos. Veterans later described the sensation as fighting while blindfolded, deafened, and slowly sinking. Operational logs from long-range reconnaissance patrols indicate that missions planned with mathematical precision often dissolved within minutes of a storm's arrival. Elevation data became useless as trails flooded. Clay soil liquefied, pulling boots down with every step. Remaining motionless for hours, already a test under ideal conditions, became an endurance trial as water seeped into clothing, weapons, optics, and skin. Trench foot was common. Fungal infections spread rapidly. Fever followed. But extraction was rarely an option. What made these storms uniquely lethal was not just what they did to American units, but how the enemy adapted. While U.S. snipers fought to preserve equipment and composure, opposing forces moved through the rain as if it were an ally. Storms masked troop movements, concealed supply runs, and allowed enemy scouts to approach dangerously close without detection. The weather erased technological advantage. Experience replaced optics. Instinct replaced range cards. This narrative unfolds through 5 escalating realities, each more suffocating than the last. We begin with the most underestimated threat: how relentless rainfall quietly dismantled sniper precision. Not dramatically. Not instantly. But drop by drop. A scope fogging at the wrong second. A trigger finger numb from cold rain. A breathing pattern disrupted by humidity so thick it felt chewable. Silent. Sudden. Fatal. And this was only the beginning. Because once accuracy was compromised, something far more dangerous followed. Immobility. Isolation. And the slow psychological erosion that comes from realizing the environment is no longer neutral, it is hostile, intentional, and winning. The storms didn't need to kill these men outright. They only needed to wear them down. And they did. Military after-action reports repeatedly used the same understated language: whether degradation impacted mission effectiveness. What those words failed to capture was how tropical rainfall dismantled sniper precision at the most fundamental level. Precision shooting depends on consistency, consistent breathing, stable posture, predictable ballistics. Tropical storms erased consistency entirely. Rain didn't fall in drops. It descended in solid walls. Water hammered rifles until metal temperatures dropped, subtly altering barrel harmonics. Optics fogged internally, not just on the lenses, turning magnification into a blur of light and shadow. Snipers trained to trust their scopes were forced to rely on naked eyesight through curtains of rain, estimating distance in a world that had lost depth. Humidity warped ammunition. Powder burned inconsistently. Ballistic tables became theoretical. Veterans recalled rounds striking inches off target at ranges where they normally trusted muscle memory alone. And in sniper warfare, inches were the difference between invisibility and immediate compromise. But the real damage came from time. Storms didn't pass quickly. They lingered for hours. Sometimes days. Maintaining a firing position under constant rainfall meant muscles never fully relaxed. Every micro-adjustment caused mud to shift beneath elbows and knees. A position that had taken hours to build dissolved quietly underneath the shooter's weight. Rebuilding it meant movement. Movement meant detection. The body suffered first, then the mind followed. Fingers stiffened, grip weakened. Trigger control degraded. Rainwater ran down sleeves, pooling in gloves, numbing hands until fine motor control disappeared. One veteran sniper later described pulling the trigger not with the pad of his finger, but with the entire hand, squeezing blindly, hoping. Breathing became labored. The air felt heavy, saturated. Each inhale brought damp heat into lungs already strained by exertion and tension. Maintaining slow, controlled breaths essential for long-range shooting became a conscious battle. Heart rates rose. Shots rushed. Mistakes multiplied. Yet the enemy did not retreat. Storms became their camouflage. While American snipers struggled to preserve equipment, opposing forces advanced, using rain to cover sound and movement. The jungle floor, alive with runoff, swallowed footsteps. Enemy scouts moved closer than doctrine allowed, sometimes within meters, unseen and unheard. Several documented engagements show snipers abandoning shots entirely, not because targets weren't present, but because identifying friend, foe, or foliage was impossible. Worse still, storms trapped men in place. Extraction helicopters couldn't fly. Radio signals degraded. Command timelines became irrelevant. Snipers remained hidden, soaked, and isolated far beyond planned durations. Hours stretched into nights. Nights into days. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by cramps, cold shivers, and the constant fear that someone was already watching. This immobility introduced a new threat, the slow collapse of situational awareness. When nothing changes for hours, the mind invents movement. Veterans described seeing figures that vanished, hearing whispers carried by wind and rain. Every rustle became suspicious. Every shadow felt intentional. Paranoia was not weakness. It was adaptation pushed too far. And as precision failed and immobility set in, a deeper realization emerged. The storm wasn't just interfering. It was dictating behavior. It decided when men moved, when they shot, when they endured. Control, the sniper's most valued asset, had been surrendered to the sky. What came next was even worse. Because once movement was forced under these conditions, survival itself became uncertain. Movement during tropical storms was not tactical. It was desperate. Operational manuals warned against displacement in heavy rain, but doctrine collapsed when positions became untenable. Rising water exposed hides. Mudslides erased cover. Staying still meant discovery. Moving meant injury or death. The jungle floor transformed into a living trap. Trails vanished beneath flowing water. What appeared solid swallowed weight without warning. Snipers carrying rifles, radios, and days of equipment slipped repeatedly, fighting gravity as much as the enemy. Ankles twisted. Knees gave out. Falls were silent but devastating. A single sprain in denied territory could become a death sentence. Visibility dropped to arm's length. Navigation became guesswork. Compasses spun erratically under dense canopy. Landmarks dissolved into uniform green chaos. Several veteran accounts describe men moving in circles for hours, unaware they had never left their original grid square. The rain erased orientation, physical and mental. The soundscape turned hostile. Rain drowned out friendly signals while amplifying unpredictable echoes. A snapped branch could be nothing. Or everything. Commands whispered inches from the ear were lost in the downpour. Hand signals replaced speech, but trembling hands and poor light made even simple gestures unreliable. Communication, the backbone of survival, fractured. Enemy forces understood this. They waited. Storms gave them patience. Documents recovered after the war indicate deliberate exploitation of severe weather windows. Scouts advanced closer during rain, placing tripwires, listening devices, and observation points while American units remained pinned. The storm didn't just conceal movement. It inverted advantage. Physically, exhaustion accelerated. Moving through waterlogged terrain burned energy at double the rate. Wet clothing never dried, leaching heat constantly. Shivering became involuntary, violent enough to compromise stealth. Calories vanished. Dehydration paradoxically increased despite constant water exposure. The body broke down quietly. Mentally, storms stripped away future thinking. Veterans recalled shrinking their world to minutes, to steps, to breaths. Long-term objectives vanished. Survival became immediate and primitive. The mind narrowed, focusing on the next patch of ground, the next sound, the next decision. This tunnel vision saved lives and scarred them. Several declassified casualty analyses note a spike in non-combat injuries during extended storm operations, infections, hypothermia, exhaustion, collapse. These men were not wounded by bullets. They were defeated by conditions. And the most dangerous effect wasn't physical. It was the creeping belief that the jungle was alive. That it reacted. That it punished movement and rewarded stillness. That it watched. Veterans described attributing intention to weather patterns, interpreting shifts in rain or wind as warnings. Rational thought blurred. The line between awareness and superstition thinned. By the time storms lifted, units were already altered. Sleep deprivation distorted memory. Decision-making slowed. Emotional responses dulled. Men emerged older, quieter, less confident in control. They had survived, but something essential had eroded. And when the rain finally stopped, the silence that followed was worse. Because silence meant exposure. Silence after the storm was never relief. It was judgment. When rain ceased, the jungle revealed what it had concealed: damaged positions, compromised hides, altered terrain. And worst of all, uncertainty. Snipers emerged from hours or days of sensory overload into a world that felt naked. Every sound now mattered. Every movement felt exposed. Weapons told the story first. Rust bloomed along metal edges. Actions felt sluggish. Optics, wiped clean, still carried internal fog that refused to disappear. Zeros were questionable. Trust was gone. Veterans described lifting rifles that no longer felt like extensions of the body, but foreign objects unreliable, unpredictable. The enemy understood this moment. Intelligence reports show increased probing actions immediately following heavy storms. Opposing forces tested American lines, aware that men were exhausted, equipment compromised, and situational awareness degraded. Shots rang out not to kill, but to locate. To force reaction. To confirm weakness. Psychologically, this phase was devastating. During the storm, fear was constant but abstract, diffused by noise and motion. Afterward, fear sharpened. It became focused. Men replayed decisions made under stress, questioning every movement, every sound ignored. Regrets settled in. So did guilt, especially when patrol members were lost to accidents rather than combat. Sleep deprivation peaked here. The body demanded rest, but the mind refused. Veterans spoke of microsleeps broken by jolts of terror, convinced someone had moved nearby. Hallucinations intensified. Faces appeared in foliage. Shapes froze at the edge of vision. These were not signs of weakness. They were predictable consequences of prolonged exposure to uncontrollable threat. One sniper recalled the storm as the first enemy, and the silence as the second. Because silence forced reflection. It stripped away distraction and left only memory. The rain had been loud enough to drown thoughts. Its absence allowed them to surface. This is where long-term psychological damage took root. Not in the firefights, but in these quiet hours afterward. Men internalized the idea that skill and preparation could be nullified without warning. That mastery was conditional. Temporary. That survival was less about excellence and more about endurance. Storms taught a brutal lesson: control was an illusion. Many veterans carried this forward long after returning home. Sudden rain triggered anxiety. Humidity induced unease. The sound of water on metal or canvas brought back sensations of confinement and helplessness. The body remembered what the mind tried to forget. The jungle storms didn't end with the mission. They followed these men into civilian life, into sleep, into silence. And this leads to the final reality. The one rarely documented. The understanding that the greatest damage inflicted by those storms was not tactical or physical, but deeply human. According to post-war psychological evaluations and veteran testimonies, the most enduring wounds left by tropical storms were invisible. The rain stopped. The jungle was left behind. But the internal damage persisted. Long after rifles were cleaned and uniforms discarded, the storms remained embedded in memory, reflex, and identity. Snipers returned home carrying a quiet understanding few could articulate, that the environment had nearly broken them without ever firing a shot. Combat had rules. Weather did not. Storms taught men that suffering could be random, prolonged, and impersonal. There was no opponent to outthink. No tactic to counter. Only endurance and the slow erosion of certainty. Many veterans described a permanent shift in how they perceived control. In civilian life, unexpected disruptions triggered disproportionate stress responses. A sudden downpour. A power outage. A situation spiraling beyond plan. The body reacted before logic could intervene. Heart rate spiked. Muscles tensed. The jungle returned. Psychologists later identified this as a form of environmental trauma stress condition not by violence alone, but by prolonged exposure to uncontrollable natural threat. The storms had forced men into a state of hypervigilance without resolution. There was no victory moment. No clear end. Only survival until conditions changed. What made this trauma particularly isolating was its invisibility. Few wanted to hear about rain. About mud. About waiting. These experiences lacked the dramatic clarity of battle narratives. And so they went unspoken. Internalized. Reinforced in silence. Yet within those accounts lies something important. A truth often overlooked in warfare analysis. That the most profound tests of human endurance are not always imposed by enemies, but by environments that strip away agency. That break men slowly. Patiently. Without malice. The jungle storms of Southeast Asia did exactly that. They transformed elite snipers into survivors first, soldiers second. They exposed the limits of training. The fragility of confidence. The cost of existing for too long in a world that felt actively hostile. To understand these missions fully, one must look beyond tactics and outcomes. One must acknowledge the rain. The darkness. The waiting. The quiet realization that the true enemy was not always across the scope, but above it. This story is not about defeat. It is about endurance under conditions designed to erase it. And it stands as a reminder that war's most lasting scars are often carved not by bullets, but by the environments that demand everything and give nothing back.